Not yet.
Hello.
Oh, hi. Sorry.
Hey.
Hi. How you doing? Yeah. Go ahead. Russ has something to say.
Yeah. So let's talk about the upcoming award season, mainly the Oscars, but the awards in general.
Right.
This would have been a good year for the Oscars to sort of come into the 21st century, into the digital age, and change the way they do things. And a good example would be the movies that they're going to send out this year to people who vote, which I don't know how many hundreds that is. It's not that many.
Right.
What would you say the percentage is that saw them in the theaters? 5%?
Yeah, totally.
And then even if you saw it on HBO Max, another 5%?
Yeah, another 5% for sure.
So this year, wouldn't it make sense if they made some of the, Netflix and Amazon Prime Video and Hulu dramas part of the mix, even though they might be a series, but just take it as the whole work and say,
Right.
You know what, put it as the mix. As an example, there's probably not a movie that was as good as the Queen's Gambit series. Not as popular, not as
really good. It was a really good series. I agree. I mean, I watched the Queen's Gambit, all of it. Yeah, that deserves. I mean, they really should give up.
They should make a change.
Well,
Mike's not going to want to, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Well, no. The problem is you just said it. It's a series. It's not a movie.
But again, we're at a point in time where, yes, I get that old-time directors like Scorsese didn't like that people were calling movies content. But at the end of the day, it is content, and he has to just deal with that.
No.
You need to broaden your horizons. Not everything is a movie anymore.
But his
Right, not everything is a movie.
His issue was not with like miniseries versus movies. His issue was about like the Marvel universe, about like basically that being, like I think he was like pissed off by the fact that like movies like The Irishman were not getting any kind of notice anymore, and movies that are cartoon movies like the Avengers Endgame was getting a lot. I mean, the problem.
So let's debate that for a minute. So I watched both, right? I've seen a lot of the Avengers and I've seen The Irishman. And to be honest, it was hard to watch The Irishman.
I couldn't get through The Irishman, and I love Pacino and De Niro. And
right, well, that's my point.
It is interesting, though. I think that, and this is kind of maybe an aside and more of a psychological question than anything else, but the concept of what makes a good movie during a quarantine is something that I think we're also in a very different.
That changes things too. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, like a different frame of mind. Like I don't want to watch
the series Community. Isn't that good? I wish Chevy Chase's character would die in the series. I was hoping for him to die in the first 2 years.
Isn't the series over with?
And it's because it's so bad, and yet it's acceptable because it's a pandemic. Well, if this was any other year, I would ignore that series.
I really feel like that show just glammed on to like Parks and Rec and The Office, and it's like if for everyone has seen every Office or every Parks and Rec there is.
Anybody who doesn't watch that show for Alison Brie, you're lying.
No, she's good. Yeah,
I'm not lying. I don't. So it's fine.
But this is the thing. Like the reason that the Academy won't do that is because it will open the door that they can never close. That's the problem, Ross. They will never let
the door is open and they just haven't gone through it.
That's exactly right. That is 100% right.
But they won't. And that's
if they don't, then they're going to get then they're going to become obsolete if they don't.
No, they won't. For the Irishman to qualify for the Oscars, The Irishman had to be released in theaters along with being released. Remember, they had to hold it back on Netflix, even though Netflix spent $200 million to produce it. They had to hold it back from Netflix for like a week so it could be released in the theater.
That's the point right there. There shouldn't be those rules anymore because we don't know when the next pandemic is coming. And in theaters could be something that in 5 years doesn't exist anymore.
The only way that it'll change, Russ, is if the movie companies make the complete switch over to online, which they're never going to do.
This should have nothing to do with the movie company. This should have only.
They're the ones who run the Academy. They run the business.
Well, it should have nothing to do with awards. That's the thing.
Yeah, but they run the business.
I know. I get that.
So no. I mean, okay, and. I mean, the Golden Globes has looser restriction. I mean, that's the thing. In this year, there are going to be exceptions to the rule because, like for example, there's a movie called Pieces of a Woman that's going to get a lot of nominations.
Right. And who's seen it?
Nobody, and that's that. But nobody's seen anything, Russ.
No, but that's why they need to change, because now.
But that's just this year.
Hold on, but we used to just say, well, we didn't see it because we saw X, Y, Z, but we didn't see it because nobody saw it because nobody could see it. So
Right.
why should it be up for an award?
Well, it's based on the critical acclaim.
Well, that's the point. Critical acclaim should now be changing too, because again, we're talking about critical acclaim is basically, you might be talking about 5,000 people.
Oh, sure. I mean, but
Right? I mean, that's all we're talking about as an audience.
But that's the thing, Russ. That's sort of a microcosm of what's always been the case. Okay, a movie like Pulp Fiction, it got notice at Cannes before anybody had ever seen it. So the snooty, snobbish movie critics who go to Cannes saw it there and said, "Oh my God, this is unbelievable! This is fantastic!" Before anybody had ever seen it. So you've got them laying the groundwork. And
Right,
then
but there are no festivals right now. Zero. There hasn't been a festival in over a year.
right, but the movie reviewers are still seeing the movies. They're still
Yes,
getting
because they get those discs in the mail. I get it, but it's just how many movie reviewers are, how many voters are there, and how much of an actual audience is that of a movie? It's not much. It's minuscule.
No, I mean, I think this year you're not going to get. And remember, the Academy Awards are never based out as a popularity.
I don't know if anybody's going to watch this year because they're really not going to know anything.
Well, they're not going to watch because it's not going to be like there's not going to be people in an arena. It's it's all going to be done remotely. It's like, oh boy, that's going to be really exciting. We get to see,
But that's the point, right? All of it should change this year.
But it's not. Oh, you're muted. You're muted. You muted yourself. Hold on.
I got it.
And then we'll start. We're ready.
Yeah, no, it is the point. You're right. You guys are right. I mean, I think that. I did listen. These award shows are really bogus. I mean, they've always been bogus in my opinion. Like every award show, it really is, because I think that they've been. What are they really? They're pretend things. We're putting on pretend things that don't exactly.
They've been bogus because they're political, and I mean, and not by. I'm not talking about. I'm talking about small p politics. I'm not talking about like liberal conservative.
Right, no, I get it, but those kind of things are always going to be that way, right? So that's
like okay, and I've used this example before, and then we'll start. Russell Crowe won Best Actor for Gladiator, a movie that he had, 35 lines in. It was a great movie, no doubt, and it was a great performance, but it was by no means anywhere close to being an Oscar-worthy win.
Oh, I don't know about that. Okay.
But the thing is, compared to the next year when he was nominated for A Beautiful Mind, which was an unbelievable performance.
Sure.
Him and Denzel Washington, I believe they flip-flopped each year. Denzel Washington should have won for, it was either Malcolm X. Oh, no, The Hurricane. It was The Hurricane.
Oh, The Hurricane. Okay.
So he should have won for The Hurricane, and instead Russell Crowe won for Gladiator. And then the next year, Denzel Washington won for Training Day, which I thought was a lousy movie and not a great performance, but he played a bad guy, which was against type. And he won, and Russell Crowe didn't win for A Beautiful Mind.
right.
Al Pacino won for Scent of a Woman. That was not his best performance. It was a great movie, but it was not his best performance. Actors win for not their best performances, but when it's time for them to win, and that's bull crap. But that's the Academy. Okay, let's start.
I have a question for Davy Jones in the chat room. Superstore. Have you guys seen Superstore?
I tried. I didn't really love it. It was
great.
Nope, never seen it.
Okay.
I wanted to watch. I mean, it
might be pandemic good though, so you might have a point there. Eric.
Yeah. Like, I really like. Like I said,
what movie not to watch during a pandemic? Contagion.
Yeah,
right.
Or Outbreak. Those are the movies.
Outbreak is a good
Actually,
one.
what's funny is a friend of mine watched Outbreak and said, it gave him hope for the end of the pandemic, which is really hilarious because
that is funny actually.
You think about it, like that was a movie you never wanted to watch, but when you actually see how they survived it and the country gets back to normal, isn't that bizarre?
I'm not a fan. To Anthony, I'm not a fan of The Pianist.
No,
I couldn't watch it. It was just too tough to watch. I am a fan of Adrian Brody. Yeah, especially when he won the Oscar and he went up on stage and made out with what's her name, Halle Berry. Yeah, I took a pass at Halle Berry, and she was very appreciative. So, okay, let's go.
Here we go. It's 2:22 today.
Mm-hmm.
2:22:21. Ah, wow.
Hello,
Hockey World.
Sorry.
Yes, hello, Hockey World. It is Monday, February 22nd, 2021.
I'm Michael Agello, and it's been 1 year since I've been in Canada.
That's right.
Mother bleeper.
I'm Russ Cohen, and I'm sure Canada's happy about that.
And I'm Eklund, and I haven't been in Canada for longer than that. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday. Trying to remember when last time I was in Canada now. I guess it would be
Last
the World
February for me.
Well, for me, the World Cup of Hockey.
I was going to say, it was probably the World Cup, yeah.
World Cup of Hockey. It's a while now. Watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. It's the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. Starting a little bit late today. Thanks very much for hanging in there. We are. I wanted to start off. We got to talk about the Tahoe games a little bit, and there's a lot happened. A lot happened in these games, from like a news perspective, from an on ice perspective, but the one thing that took the cake for me was the friggin' Colorado Avalanche uniforms, which I think were just.
They're not the Colorado Avalanche uniforms.
I know,
but X makes a point. Like.
No, they are the most beautiful.
How they were going to look. They looked better on. They
look incredible on. They look better than the original Nordiques uniforms looked. I like the Nordiques blue. Obviously, that was a great blue. But for the home, the away Nordique blue is my favorite of them. But the home Nordique blue, it was right there. Because, you know why? Because the emblem is huge. if you look at this. I'm a big fan of large emblems on jerseys, and that's just a big difference between the Vegas looked like the CSK Russian team to me. Like that's what those uniforms look like to me, the red ones. Is it CSKA? You've seen these you've seen the Russian uniforms with the cross in the middle. It's kind of, and they're red. They looked a lot like Vegas uniforms.
Well, of course they're red.
Yeah, but they looked a lot like the Vegas uniforms, and
we'll get into that later, actually.
Yeah, we will. But this is these uniforms. I actually broke down and bought one in the middle of.
I don't blame you. They were.
And it's it's one of those things. It's like, okay, I have a big uniform collection. I haven't bought a uniform in a while. Did you
get a player or blank?
I got a player. I was torn on what to do. I went with Nathan McKinnon.
Okay.
But it's hard to get them. First of all, it's hard to find where they are. They're not just on NHL.com, which was surprising to me. You would think they would be there. They're not.
They're not.
They're not.
Adidas' website.
I think I went to Adidas. I went to eBay. eBay through Adidas' website. I think
they're sold out of the Licalice Pro Shop in Quebec City.
They're gone, and so I paid probably a little bit more than I should have for it. I was torn between. I have a Makar jersey. I have the other outdoor jersey.
So you already have Makar.
They had McKinnon or Forsberg, which was kind of interesting. Obviously Forsberg.
Yeah, but I wouldn't have gotten Forsberg for the.
Yeah, because he didn't play for that team, but he did actually play for Quebec.
And if he played, he would have played for a couple periods and gotten hurt.
He's one of my favorite players. It was a tough time, I went for it. I went for the McKinnon jersey, but they were absolutely
okay. Let's talk about the event.
Yes.
It was beautiful. The optics were gorgeous.
Yeah.
No doubt. The first period of that game on Saturday was unbelievable. I could barely watch the game. I was too busy watching the mountains and the water. But the problem is, and this is not the NHL's problem, except for the fact that they got talked into it by NBC. Mm-hmm. The problem is that it was too friggin' warm. That's they should have
during the day. You never know, right? They did lots.
Never know.
They did lots of studies on this, and and I thought about that, Mike. It's and I thought that would be a reaction. I thought that'd be a reaction of a lot of people, and it really, there is some fairness to that for sure. It's a risk, but at the end of the day, it's kind of what I like about the NHL, that they take these risks. When they make a mistake, they just go with it. A lot of leagues would be way too embarrassed and to even try it. That the NHL tries these things. Mm-hmm. I like. I'm up for that. That's something.
It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a mistake by this much, Ak. They were skating around in slush.
No. But all right. So let's talk about outdoor game perspective, right? I've been to 23 of them.
Yeah.
Spoken to all the guys that are in charge of them, players, otherwise. I mean, it wasn't like that AHL one that was outside where they were literally skating in inches of water. It wasn't that.
Right.
It was definitely getting soft. And when people, this is what bothers me is first people were yelling, "Where's the Zamboni?" Well, you can't put Zamboni on soft ice. Then people are yelling, "Well, why aren't the chillers good enough?" And it's like, yeah, Mother Nature's stronger than the chillers, and the sun's actually closer there. So you've got that problem.
And
Like,
you're near the water, which makes the temperature of the
Yes.
3 or 4 degrees higher.
yes, you can't control the clouds. You could only do your best. Most of these games, 99.9% of these games get delayed, start late.
Right.
An example, like in Pittsburgh, I think it was 2011, it was supposed to be at 1 o'clock. It was raining. They didn't like the conditions. They pushed it to 8 o'clock.
Right.
And that was similar to what happened with the Flyers. And that game coming back too. Washington, 2-hour delay because of the sun. I showed the picture I took with the sun shield on it. It was fine after that, and they were hoping for that. The thing is, like Mike said, they got that good first period, and they probably still had people hooked for at least another half hour or more on the other stuff they filled in, and that followed English Premier Soccer. At the end of the day, that's really what NBC cared about. Now, from the NHL's perspective, if people are going to say this is a failure, it's not, because they finished the games. People like the games. Now, maybe you didn't watch the end of it on Saturday. That's fair.
I did. I mean, I did. It's my job, so I did it.
Yeah, and I did it too. But the Sunday game was great. It's just, hey, it's not the NHL's fault that the Flyers stunk. But the game itself, everything went off really well. There's definitely funny moments, like when they had the Olympic athlete. They leave her off, so she still has to walk another 100 steps to the rink. Like, why? You're driving her anyhow. Drop her out front. There's always those little things that we like to have fun at. But at the end of the day, for people that want to say, like, this is a failure, it wasn't. Because a failure means they didn't have any games and they were both washed out. That's a failure.
Well, when you talked to the Bruins last night, I mean, granted, they won 7-3, and that always changes things. But they were just they said it was the best thing they've ever done. They loved it.
Players love it.
And it is hard to, there was issues. I mean, they're trying to start it at 7:30, which they're trying to get into a primetime type situation. 7:30 they probably should have started at 8, because honestly, you did have the sunset was beautiful. Mm-hmm. The shadows before the first half of that game, and it was 2-2, and so neither team gained advantage.
Baseball plays with shadows all the time. At pitcher to batter, all the time.
It's a little different with a shadow on a white surface than a shadow on a.
Who was it from Colorado that said that it was basically dangerous to start that game with the way the sun was beating down, that they could barely see the puck?
Yeah, there was.
This is the issue. This is the issue. Is the fact that, and Russ, the game that we went to in Toronto, I believe it started at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon as the sun was beginning to set. Mm-hmm. You're playing on the West Coast, so 3 o'clock is noon. When the sky, when the sun is at its peak in the sky, which is the worst time to start it.
Right, but all right. So if you play a game on a Saturday night and you want to start it at 7 o'clock, NBC is going to be like, listen, we're going to the news at 11 o'clock and then SNL. If the game's not over, people are going to have to find it on like the cooking channel, because we're not changing that. And that is why they don't do that, Mike.
Yeah, I'm just saying that it was an event that was scheduled for television's sake.
Yes.
And that, I think, contributed to the disaster. And also, I think the thing.
Oh, yeah, disaster is Al Capone's vault when Geraldo opens it up.
In spite of the fact that the games were played, that's good.
Isn't that the most important thing?
What I think is going to be a sort of a shot across the bow to the league is the fact that they will probably never do another event that is like they were talking about Lake Louise or Niagara Falls or like all these spectacle events, but they won't do them unless they can have massive amounts of people there. And this was the one year where they said they could have it with no people because of the pandemic. They will never do that again.
It might actually be the opposite of that, Mike. This might give them the ability in the future to say, okay, we're going to play once in a while. We're going to play these games without fans, just in beautiful settings for
if you can make enough money on it. Yeah,
I mean, it's about making money, but it's also the other thing that kind of hit me about it. And I don't know,
that is the number one thing. Let's not fool ourselves.
Making money, but making money can be viewed in many different ways, as you know, Russ. Like I'm sitting there and I bought a jersey. I'm other people. There's all kinds of things. People are, there's advertising. There's Does this
Right,
get
it's all
people
of
more,
that.
does this get people more interested in hockey in the long run? I mean, it's hard to you can sit there and say you make X amount of dollars if you sell X amount of seats, but then there's also the long term money making process. So it's hard. It's an advertising media type thing for the league. It's a good advertisement for the league, and I think that there's just something to be played for that too. I think something that hit me, and I know Rush, you wrote the book on outdoor games, and literally, and something that hit me that I don't know that you ever touched on in your book, and I'm trying. I really have to read your book because I haven't read your book, and I really want to. So I've got to get a copy of it because
I'll give you the cliff notes. Anyhow.
Yeah, but this is the thing that hit me for the first time. Every other major sport, football, baseball, basketball, soccer, call those the other major sports. Soccer's coming up in the U.S., but worldwide.
No doubt.
Every other major sport can be played outside all the time, right? So pretty much you can play baseball outside, you can play football outside.
Mm-hmm.
You go to your park, you can play street hockey for sure. That's people play that outside, but and soccer. Hockey is a sport that that Americans have the perception, since you have to play it in an arena where it's expensive to join and all that stuff. It's an indoor thing that only occurs inside, and you can't just pick up a stick and go play. And
I think that's half of America. I think we forget about the other half, from Minnesota over, where they're in colder temperatures all the time, and they grew up with it.
They grew up playing outside. Yeah, there's no question that that's half of America, but it is a big thing to sit there and say, okay, when you see it being played outside, it's suddenly not being played in a really. And it's hard to really put this into perspective, except for when I was a kid. I remember going into before you're actually around. We're around indoor hockey arenas all the time, but but if you've never been around an indoor hockey arena and you go to one just out of nowhere, you're kind of amazed by it. You're there's a big thing of ice inside. It's really bizarre. I remember being a kid seeing the Flyers.
So you never skated outdoors as a kid?
I did. I skated outdoors as a kid all the time.
Okay, well, I'll give you an example. My grandparents owned a lake house, a small lake house up in Peekskill, New York. Right.
Right.
We skated on that lake. Right.
And I mean, Philadelphia, there's a difference between New York, even where you grew up and where I grew up. I mean, Philadelphia is, and you can tell by my rink, which is a constant battle, is right on the edge.
It's warmer. Yes.
If I lived 10 miles north, if my daughter goes to college 20 miles north of here, and when it turns to rain here, it's still snowing there. There's a small difference all the time.
Yes.
So, the difference is, I think that there's this feeling that I always had with hockey as a kid. I wasn't allowed to play ice hockey because it was too expensive. It was I played football, I played baseball, I played other things, but I couldn't play ice hockey. It was just too expensive. You had to play it, because
it would have been a battle for me. When I tell people, there was one rink near me called Rackina Rink, and that's where the Islanders practiced. You couldn't get ice on that rink, right?
You could never get ice. There were no rinks.
People were like, well, you could have gone to Caniac, which is, again, now you're talking about a half hour away on Long Island with tons of traffic. My parents have 2 jobs and the cost. And so, yes, it wasn't feasible for me.
Right. And it wasn't feasible for a lot of people because of the cost. And, so we played street hockey and we skated on lakes when we could. But I think there's something about hockey being played outside that makes it more real. It makes it more okay, this is actually seeing those players skate instead of on this artificial, technological icy surface inside. Mm-hmm. Just seeing them skate outside among the trees and stuff like that, it suddenly feels more like a real sport. In a weird, I don't know if that makes any sense, but I got that feeling.
I think it does. Here's what I would say. We have to remember that before even this game, right, there was a gap from 2003 to 2008 where there were no outdoor games. But they were doing their research, and they were looking at places, and every year they look at places. They have teams of people that go out and research these places, and we don't ever find out about them. They stay over. They stay for a couple of days. They send in reports. Everybody acts like, hey, this is easy. You could just go do it here, and it's no problem. But there's a million variables. And you saw in this game, there's 1,000,001 variables when you're doing it in a place like this.
Right.
I'm not trying to rake the league over.
No, I know.
It was a noble effort. It was like I said, it was very picturesque.
It was.
you could have had that picturesque quality at 7:30 at night instead of 3:00 in the afternoon, because it would have been 4:30 on the West Coast and the temperature would be going down.
Well, I bet you anything they tried to do that with NBC, and NBC said
well,
no.
they ended up doing it for the second game, and you saw the
Right.
beautiful visuals when the Flyers and the Bruins were playing. The only thing that wasn't beautiful was the way the game went.
But the difference is at that point, like NBC doesn't have a choice. The league basically says, this is the only way we could hold the game. And they're like, okay, then give us another game in that slot. And they did. They gave the Devils Capitals. And so that's a good move on the fly by the league for doing that. And they're not getting any credit for that.
Yeah, right. I mean, that turned out to be a pretty interesting game too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but let's get into the actual.
Came back and won. That was a good game.
Let's talk about the actual games themselves. Colorado, Vegas. Okay, this.
I'll tell you one big thought. I had one big thought.
Yeah, go.
Big thought was I thought Colorado's speed was going to be too much for Vegas, and it was early on in the first period until the ice went bad. And then the minute the ice was good again, Vegas couldn't catch them. Vegas couldn't. Yeah. They couldn't touch them on the power play, even though their penalty kill is good, but they couldn't stop them from the puck movement. The amount of puck movement, the skating from Makar is just. Oh,
God, did you see that move? They showed it a lot. That move at the blue line was ridiculous.
The line.
He did that against. He did that against Stone. It wasn't like he did that against the rookie.
I know.
He did that move against Stone at the blue line.
We've never seen a player do that in the modern age and do it so easily. And between him and Byram, who is a youngster,
he's ridiculous. He's ridiculous.
You can now see why we're high on him. But here's another thing that I sent Mike's way. He didn't like it, but I'm going to tell you about it. And that is, so Philip Grubauer, he's having a great year. Everybody likes to point out what they think he isn't, but right now his GSAA, his goals against, is 9.0.
Yeah.
In comparison, he has fewer wins than Freddie Anderson's. His GSAA is minus 0.6. The only reason I bring this up is because people will still say, well, Freddie Anderson's a better goalie than Grubauer. Grubauer has to prove it to me. I get that even both may have to prove it to you, but at the end of the day, right now, this moment, Grubauer is one of the best goalies in the NHL. Now, maybe that'll change over the next half season, but if he's this good, they're going to win the Stanley Cup.
Oh yeah, I agree. I mean, he has those moments when Grubauer. I mean, the knock on Grubauer has been his playoff performances, right? So, or getting hurt in the playoffs, struggling with the Capitals in what was it, one game? I mean, he only or two games. I forget. Were they down 3-1? The Capitals.
He lost the first game.
He lost the first game, then they yanked him.
Yeah.
And then
right, Columbus, right? Way back when. Yeah. So I mean, I think Grubauer, and I think there are other. I think like I've said before, I think their backup is really good too. I think they have.
God, please.
No, I do. I think that he was hurt last year and put into a really bad spot. He played very hurt last year. I talked to people around.
And then here's my okay. Grubauer still has to prove it to me. Is he having a great year? Yes, he is. I mean, 1.67 goals against. Colorado's playing really well. You can't really, make a case against him right now, but he's got to prove it when when it comes time, which is the playoffs.
Are you worried about Anderson's numbers because he had a 14 GSAA 2 years ago?
No, anybody who watched the game on Saturday night.
I'm talking about the whole season, not Saturday. We're talking about the whole season.
Well, okay. Well, Russ, I mean, again, Anderson is notoriously a slow starter, and he started slow in January, like he starts slow in October. You always look at him when 3-4 months into the season when he's had 3 good months and 1 bad month. And then again, he's got to prove it when it counts, which is the playoffs.
You know what? I wish you and Leafs Nation would come up with like a wristband, like an NFL quarterback, and this way you could dial up uses for Anderson.
Leafs Nation is not the biggest Freddie Anderson fan. I just think it's inherently unfair to determine the quality of a goaltender when their defense has sucked for 4 years.
Okay, I get it. But I'm also saying that even with that same sucking defense 2 years ago, his numbers were exponentially better.
Right.
He is not the same goalie as 2 years ago. That is my basic point.
I mean, I don't like I said, anybody who watched the game on Saturday night knows that the only reason that they won that game was A, Austin Matthews, and B, Freddie Anderson. Freddie Anderson was unbelievable in that game and kept, with the exception of 33 seconds when the team gave up a breakaway and another ridiculous chance that ended up in the back of the net. He was fantastic. So,
I don't discount that. The other thing, Eck, about the game was Fleury was better than the Avalanche power play for half the game. The minute he wasn't, the game was over.
Yeah, I mean, Fleury has to be, and this to me, watching that game again, I stand by my concept that Vegas is third in the division, and I said it the whole time that they're the third best team in that division, bar none. Like then, and that they could struggle, they could fall in fourth. Now they're a very good team, but I really do feel that they are not at Colorado or St. Louis's level. Vegas, they just aren't. I mean, when you watch the teams play against each other, they just don't. St. Louis is a much higher level. Colorado might be the best team in the league. I mean, this is
about St. Louis. Justin Falk is back to being Justin Falk, and because of that, it does make you look at St. Louis in a different way now.
Yeah, this is going to be the hardest, and whoever doesn't finish first in that division, there's the second, third playoff matchup is going to be insane, right? I mean, it's going to be St. Louis, Vegas in the first round, or what have you. Or
I did love, by the way, when they had Pietrangelo mic'd up, and McKinnon's coming down, and he's got to try and get in position. He sees there's no one on the other side, and he's like, "Oh boy!" That was.
You saw McKinnon was just flying, and it was like
great and off the cuff though, and that was like great for fans because that's what Pietrangelo was thinking in his head. Like really, that's what he's thinking when he sees McKinnon barreling down. And nobody is there to defend him, and he's got a head of steam. Like, what can you do?
Yeah. And so going into the next game, I think, and in the Flyers Bruins game, I think obviously this Flyers team undermatched completely. I felt like Couturier got hurt early in this game with that one hit to the head, and I felt like
game though.
He still had a great game, but I'm wondering. I'm very curious if a normal game with everybody healthy, if Couturier stays.
He shook it off pretty good, though. I don't think it's as bad, but you could be right. I'm not going to say you're wrong.
I mean, the first he gets hit and then he makes a pass. He makes that pass into the corner, which everyone's like great goal by Farabee. But everyone's thinking, oh, that was a great play by Couturier. To me, it looked like a frustrated play. Like he just took the puck and threw it into the corner. Like
I think you're right about that.
I don't think it was planned. I think he just was.
No, I don't think it was planned.
Just got leveled. He got over the red line, said screw it, and just threw it into the corner.
And Farabee is really good at picking things up, and
Farabee, man,
just an amazing play, and that's why I told people I thought he had elite skills, and he's showing it. I'll tell you the two things in this game. So on the Flyers side, it's easy to cop out and say, "Oh, look at all the guys they're missing on the top six and Justin Braun." The biggest problem with the Flyers is Gostisbehere can't hit the net, and nobody on the Flyers, including Provorov, could hit the net or even get a shot on goal. Middle of the second period, they had 3 shots on goal from their entire defense, and that's including Gustafsson, who was brought in for his offense. And if I'm the coach, I'm basically talking to these defensemen and saying, listen, when we're down all of these forwards, you have to be the difference. You have to make up the difference. We've got guys in the crease, and you can't even hit the net. To me, they were hanging with Boston, but the minute their defense was failing, not playing defense, but failing on the offensive end, that's when you realize they had nothing.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. One, there's definitely, the Bruins are a very good team, obviously,
yes,
and Pasternak was flying around the ice. When Pasternak's flying around the ice, you have
he owns the Flyers. Let's face it, he does.
Yeah, he owns the Flyers. So does Rask. He owns the Flyers
too. Marchand was unbelievable that first play.
Yeah, it's going to be. I mean, it's going to be. For the Flyers to get past them in the playoffs would be quite the feat. But I agree with you on that one. We talked about that earlier in the year. I was like, I think it could be pretty even. Now, it's pretty obvious that also, and you hate to blame Carter Hart in a game like this, but you also have to sit back and say that they have an issue with Carter Hart.
They do have an issue. There's no question.
And they have. There are certain things around the league, especially. And I text you guys all the time. I know, but these low waffle shots just above his pad, right below his waffle, he's missing all.
Are you talking about that second one that went under his arm?
Yeah, that was
Stop that with the waffle.
Yeah, no, he could have.
Okay. Who could have predicted that?
I know, Mike. Obviously, sometimes you're right. And
this is the point. Mike and I did make the point just in saying, hey, look, Carter Hart's 22 years old and whatever, and he was the youngest goalie to ever play in an outdoor game, right?
Mhm.
And I tried to tell people in articles, this outdoor game is completely different than what he played in Buffalo against World Junior Town. It's completely different. But at the end of the day with Hart, he is still a young goalie. He's only played 85 career games. That's all he's played in the NHL. And he's still going to have ups and downs. And that's why you can't anoint a guy and say, hey, he's our guy. He's going to be one of the best in the league. Because how often does that guy who's 22 become best in the league and stay that way? Not that often anymore.
It's fascinating because it's not just the Flyers that have anointed him. You know what I mean? And I'm again, I think Hart can get there. My issue with Hart right now is that there's some goalies that have come up through time that are and like Marty Biron used to say Lundqvist was a Maserati or whatever. That Lundqvist, everything had to be perfect for Lundqvist all the time. If everything was perfect, Lundqvist was incredible. I kind of feel like Hart has that in him. I feel like Hart has a little bit of that in him too, because you see it like certain situations. Throw him. He's definitely a thinking goalie. Like he goes through every
cerebral goalie. Yes,
he goes through every mistake he makes and tries to correct it. And all the time he's constantly switching things around. But he also, I think, has like such a ritualistic way of playing goal too, that he has a really hard time. It helps him in coming back from a bad game. When he starts the next game, it helps him. But in the middle of a game, there are times when you just have to pull him. Like there's a
inside act. I was on a show called Hockey Nation over the weekend, right?
Yeah.
Talking about the outdoor games, but then when they found out I knew about prospects, I didn't realize I was on the show with a U.S. scout from the Everett Silvertips. So of course we started talking about Carter Hart, and the first thing he said was he's an extremely young goalie, and that is the part that is most overlooked about Carter Hart right now as to how we treat him, because it's not the same as a quarterback in the NFL, because that guy's been through 4 years of college when they're 22, 23. He hasn't played those kinds of games yet. Not enough of them.
And we saw last year the away games, being a problem. Yesterday, I felt like, you're going to sit there. I'm going to say that, I think the vision in the first period and part of the second period were problems for him too. I think he is a fine-tuned type machine, and when you need to pull him. Like there's he does not improve in a game that he's bad in. He improves the next game very much so, but within a game, and that's part of that is youth. That part of that is absolutely youth. Just like he's overwhelmed and he starts to go backwards. He starts to figure out he wants to do too much to kind of get himself back on top. And a goalie has to just stop and say, okay, we're fine. Next goal, next shot. You can't try to make it up. You can't try to make it. He tries to make it.
Talk about why did I say cerebral goalie? So he's a cerebral goalie because he reads and reacts. That's the first thing he does. He's also a head trajectory guy, and that's how he keeps up with shots that come out from long distances because of the head trajectory. Those are things that a cerebral goalie does, rather than someone like Elliott, who's more of a reactive goalie and can play with things breaking down in front of him because he doesn't operate the same way. That's what
Elliott is exactly opposite him in every way, and you're right. And there's benefits to both. Okay,
yes.
I mean, a cerebral goalie who is calm and able to and mature is Carey Price. That's a great thing to have. The Elliott's top and line goalie would be like a Tim Thomas or Dominic Hasek, where you have just reacting all the time. But the other thing he does is he does a lot of this. I've talked to him about it, where I gave up a goal. Why did I give up that goal? And then he plays that through in his head, and he plays it through in his head as the game is going on. So he's playing the last goal he gave up in his head. And to me, other goalies do that too, but you don't do that as the game is going on, because if you do that as the game is going on, that's a major part of your RAM power.
The one that damaged his psyche was the Frederick goal, not because it wasn't a good goal. Frederick was smart to put it on net, but because it was a weirdly shot puck and he didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And the other part of that game is people were wondering, why didn't AV pull him? Well, this is now what you're seeing in Coach Alain Vigneault. And if he feels like you started this game and you should at least finish out the period because it's your mess, that's what he was doing with Carter.
That doesn't work. We wouldn't do that with any player that wasn't the goalie that was his age. Like any younger player, Vigneault pulls out of there when they start.
But this is what Alain Vigneault does with goalies.
The issue is Vigneault with a young goalie is not a great combination right now. And so to move past that, but he's not, like I say, the Flyers aren't the only one. I mean, look at Elliott Friedman and all these people. They're Carter Hart, everywhere you look, is projected as the backup goalie in the Olympics for Team Canada. I think that's crazy. I think that's a crazy thing
Yeah, that may not happen. That may not happen.
It may, I mean,
might-
and you know, like right now, I would argue that Mackenzie Blackwood actually
He might be the third string goaltender.
Right.
could be the third, but I would put Mackenzie Blackwood, who is older and more experienced, and just looks more solid all the time, right now, as the second best goalie in
It's
Canada.
possible he could beat him out for the job. It is.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this because a lot of stuff has been breaking over the last hour or so about the Panarin situation.
Yeah, let's talk about this.
I mean, okay. First of all, the announcement comes out from the Rangers that he's taking a leave of absence from the team. Allegations have come out from Russia that when he was in 2011, when Russ wasn't that the year he was in the World Junior in Buffalo?
I believe so.
That he now the allegation came from former NHLer Andrei Nazarov, and Slava Malamud on Twitter basically said Nazarov is a mentally unstable ex-KHL coach and NHL goon. I'm not going to cast aspersions against him, but that's his characterization,
right.
not mine. But we'll just go with that. That the accusation is that he beat up an 18-year-old girl in 2011 in a Russian bar. Now they believe that
he's also 18 in 2011, by the way, isn't he?
What's that?
He's also 18 in 2011. I was trying to figure out how old he would be.
Yeah, he was 18 or 19 years old.
Right.
Yeah. Now, they believe that these accusations are being brought up because he made pro-Navalny statements, Navalny being the person who's against Putin, who's in jail right now in Russia.
Right.
And this is a way of getting back at him. And now Val Melmood said it may not be true that they're checking the records in Latvia. Apparently, this is where happened. There's no doubt that Nazarov's motivation is political.
Yeah.
Nazarov may or may not be acting on his own accord, and the likeliest motivation here is to keep Panarin from the Russian Olympic team. So go ahead.
Let's break it down. Anytime you oppose Vladimir Putin and especially pump his competitor or the guy who's going to run against him eventually, or maybe not because he's in jail, you get this treatment. And you never know when it's going to happen. You never know in what shape it's going to happen. And now this is the way it's happened. And somebody said that Nazarov is a Putin supporter. That's not surprising. I have very little faith in this statement. And again, we'll find out. But again, even they can make up police reports from Latvia. So
I'm not nothing about this. It may have happened. If it happened, it's a horrible thing. But there's no way we'll ever know for sure what happened.
We're not going to know for sure.
We're not going to know for sure. And the thing is that right now, Panarin has got to be worried about the fact that his family is in Russia. Yeah, and I'll bet you anything his leave of absence is probably tied to trying to get his family out of Russia.
Absolutely.
His family has been very very vehemently opposed to Putin for a while in Russia. Like they've been, and this is not. What's kind of surprised me about this is his family they've before he even put this out, his family was very anti-Putin thing. So before he even put out the thing he put out himself, Panarin did. So his family already is definitely in trouble over there as far as and should get the hell out of there if they could. But it's a terrible situation for.
It is a terrible.
I've heard is a really good guy in every which way. I mean, I only talked to Artemi Panarin like once, but talking to people who know him, through Columbus and stuff like that, nothing but good things about him.
No, he's a happy-go-lucky kid.
Yeah.
A couple things. So somebody asked if he gets canceled now. He won't get canceled now here in the NHL because the Rangers have backed him in a statement, a very strong statement. So that was good. Yeah. He'll get canceled in Russia. He won't be with the Russian Olympic team now because, again, Putin's got great influence there. So he probably gets canceled on that. But at the end of the day,
American citizenship, let him play for us. That's what I'd say.
Yeah. That would be the greatest thing. That would be like the Brett Hull heel.
Would that be the perfect thing? Like the perfect thing in that situation? If for Biden to come out and say, we see, that's the other thing that's kind of interesting about this. I thought about this. If this happened in another sport that was like more major than hockey, it would be a way bigger story. First off, it's a big story now, but it would be huge if you had a player like a Russian 7-foot center or whatever.
Yeah.
For the Knicks, you would have the president of the United States coming out.
Although it happened in ice dancing, and we had that Canadian couple defect here, and they ended up winning gold medals, I think, in the Olympics for us.
Right. I mean, to me, there's. I would like.
You remember that?
I don't.
I would like to hear like actually the the U.S. government come out and say something about this and back him in some way, shape, or form and offer that to him. I think that would be.
They will if it gets to the point where there's actual threats on him or his family that are made public. If it's made in the U.S., I think then you might. They're going to have to, but they're going to stay away from it otherwise, because again, you don't want to get too deep in it over there. And Putin wants you to get in deep in it, but you have to sort of resist that. You do.
Right. You definitely do. And you have to, the idea is the less publicity to it, the better, right? Because that's usually the issue here. Because it's all about publicity and it's trying to like smear Panarin's name, but it's so blatantly obvious what it is. I don't think Panarin's name is being smeared even in Russia. I think even in Russia, people will understand that this is what's happening here.
No, they definitely will understand. I think we all could have seen this happening because this is about the second time in 2 years that that Panarin has come out, and he hasn't said a word about Putin, but basically come out and did something to offend Putin, which doesn't take much. And so,
but Russ, I mean, things have been, suffocated over there. I mean, there have been riots going on and protests going on for weeks that we hardly ever hear in American media.
You have to watch the world news to get that. You're right.
Yeah, BBC or something like that.
Yes.
Now, I referenced it in the beginning of our show, and there are more people than I who have not been able to go freely back and forth across the Canadian and American borders. I mean, it's something that we took for granted. And then obviously in March that happened. And now, like I said, I didn't realize until I checked my financial records, because I was, to see the last time I took a train trip from Burlington up to Toronto. And I confirmed it yesterday that the last game that I went to at Scotiabank Arena was the David Ayres game. I'm sure it was. I'm sure I found out. And by the way, David Ayres is a friend of mine on Facebook, and he liked, because I posted the photo, and he actually liked it. So, did you know that they're making a Disney movie?
I do know. Yeah.
Yes.
I know that. No.
So
it was the vein of the Rookie, I'm sure, and and that's good. I did want to answer Elizabeth in chat room. From Russia with Love was a great 007 movie, one of the best actually. I agree with that. But
Panarin not playing in the big blow of the Rangers. It is. It's a huge blow of the Rangers. But
it is. But I mean, again, it's understable. And
I think So, Mike, we were talking about that. It's funny. I remember texting you during this game last year, a year ago.
You have a nasty habit of texting me when the worst things happen.
Right, and then right. It is very true. Like, it's usually before they happen. I text you, which is true in this game too. Like, I text you before.
No, it was in the midst, because I remember you texted me just as the Leafs scored on their first shot on goal.
Right,
and I think it was 5-2, and they scored on the first shot on goal, and everybody there was like, "Oh my God, this is going to be so ugly," and then. They couldn't get a shot for like 6 minutes. It was like they got suffocated, and then he made a few saves. I mean, he didn't have to make a ton of saves. I'm sure. See, that's the thing, right?
Ones you needed to make, though, he did.
Right, oh yes, but I am sure that the Disney movie, like the Dennis Quaid movie, The Rookie, where it has him throwing 97 when he was throwing 92. They're going to have David Ayres basically pretending he's Patrick Waugh.
Yeah.
I interviewed the guy who was the Rookie. His name escapes me right now. About a year ago. Jim Morris, is that it?
Jim Morris.
I got to tell you, he doesn't tell the story the way Disney did. So you're right about that. He's a very humble guy.
Yeah.
I think if anything in this movie, they're going to make the Leafs seem better than they are. So the win is much bigger.
It's just what he did best when he went in there, in my opinion. What he really did well. It was Carolina that won the game. I mean, the Carolina defense just smothered them, and they really worked their tails off to win that game. I mean, Carolina played defense 200 feet of defense, and just completely made. And then also you take that. It's also Saturday night. It's hockey night in Canada. The Leafs are on. We talked about how important that is sometimes. And the pressure was on the Leafs. I mean, if you're not going to beat, you're a Zamboni driver, and it really was every possible wrong situation for the Leafs to be put into. Like, it's bad. They're already down in the game, and now you come into the situation. But I think what Ayres did well was he just didn't look panicky in there. Like that, the best thing about his play was that he looked
because he didn't have any shots on goal.
no, but even when he had shots, he was calm about it. Like
I get that.
It's a terrifying type of situation to be in. But he really he looked like a straight up stand up goalie who's just going to play his angles and let the puck hit him, which is what he did.
Russ, this is where the Disney touch will be felt. They will make Jake Gardner into Shea Weber.
Right.
I don't even know if they can do that, but I follow Mrs. Ayres on
yeah,
Twitter. He does a lot with charity, and David's a great guy, and he posts stuff.
They've really done the best they can do with this situation.
This will be a great movie. It'll be very easy to root against the Leafs anyhow. So I think a lot of us will like it.
I just hope they don't have they have Austin Matthews with a penciled on mustache,
they're going to.
They have Jack Black portraying Nacho Libre, pretending to be.
They're going to make it a big heel turn from the Marlies switching alliances in that game. They're going to make a big deal out of that.
Yeah, he's going to jump off the top rope. It's a heel turn.
Okay, by the way, Miracle on Ice was today too, but David Ayres took precedence over that.
Yeah,
sucked the life out of the 40th anniversary of the Miracle on Ice. But no, the thing is, okay, it makes me, and maybe the reason that it makes me feel this way is because I am old, but it makes me feel real old because it seems like yesterday that I was watching that game on television.
Yeah, it actually still gives me a sense of pride, and it still gives me, again, recently, I forget what I was watching. I think, it was ESPN, and I think Max Kellerman said that the James Buster Douglas fight was the biggest upset in sports history. And of course, he's wrong. This was the biggest upset in sports history and will continue to be. You can't replicate these. The only way you could have a bigger upset is to have, a couple of years ago, maybe Serena Williams losing to an amateur tennis player who's not even ranked. Maybe you could say that. But that's the only way you can get close to this. It's just there is no way to quantify it. The amount of resources, we've seen all the movies on how they fueled the Russian team and how those guys practiced. And Herb Brooks really did a masterful job. And honestly, I interviewed a lot of the guys. And the biggest thing I took away from it, guys like McClanahan and all those guys would keep telling you that, you know what? Herb worked with them all the time, mentally and also physically. And they were the most physically fit team. They were better physically fit than a lot of NHL teams by the way Herb Brooks trained them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's really the truth.
I mean, it's really fun to we'll get Laidlaw in here sometime to talk about this because he had Herb as a coach.
Yes.
In New York, and he has great stories to talk. Right after that, when Brooks came to the NHL, he has great stories to talk about him.
And he ripped on Laidlaw a little too.
So he did. And he was very good. I mean, the games he played, were classic coaching games that people don't play enough of, but really just he did it so well. And you can imagine what he did with those kids. I mean, it's
think about the Smurfs when Brooks came and became the Rangers coach, and he had all the undersized guys, and he got a lot of his guys back there, Dave Silk and guys like that. The NHL wasn't that league then, yet those guys were succeeding because of Herb Brooks. They didn't win a cup or anything, but they were a pretty good team.
Yeah, absolutely. They were absolutely a good team. That was crazy. I mean, it was just funny to watch. You can think what he's doing to the NHL players, with Tom. And I hear the stories about Tom, and I can just imagine what he's doing to the college players, which is way easier to manipulate than the NHL guys who was dealing with. But yeah, I mean, it's I watched
getting pulled is still the single biggest thing. We get it, but still they had to win after that. And it wasn't all about Tretiak, but a part of it is.
Yeah, and they were losing that game to Finland. I think after two. It was after two periods of it. They're on 1-0, and they ended up winning 3-1.
I mean, what it started is really is unmistakable. What it did for hockey is unmistakable.
USA Hockey was a massive boost for them.
The effect it had on the '96 World Cup of hockey down the line is
it had a big effect there. That's
a cool story to me. How those connected together. Those guys who were in that, how they were inspired by the '80 thing and believed they could beat them. I mean,
actually, what they did over the weekend with around the Lake Tahoe with the Squaw Valley guys was amazing because Mike and I were talking about the Squaw Valley guys just on the phone a couple weeks ago, and a couple of those guys were alive, and I was like, yeah, they were unheralded and how great they were, and just to hear them say that they were in like stores and the Canadian guys were walking around and they were like, yeah, we have this. This game will be easy.
Oh, yeah.
They heard them say that.
No, the crazy thing about the 96 thing was, how they lose the first game in Philly, I think it was, right?
It wasn't Philly because it was the first game they played at the Wachovia Center or whatever they called it back then. They didn't even have all the seats put in.
I was there for it. I was there for that game.
Yeah, they had most of the seats put in last minute.
Yep, I was there. That was the first time I'd ever been in that arena. And, we were psyched because we had our season tickets forever at the Spectrum. That we were offered tickets to that, so I went to that game.
Yeah.
And but then they go into with basically the tournament. They looked like it was going to be handed to the Canadians. They win in Montreal in Game 2, which that to me was, and then they're trailing in Game 3. It's just and they won that game. So it was a crazy series.
I mean, Richter was at the height.
Richter. And Mike Richter's Hall of Fame was made in that series, and that's what I'll never understand why he's not in the Hall of Fame. Just based on that alone, to me, was that alone. I mean, he obviously has a great NHL career too, but that particular series was so epic in terms of
probably more unlikely than the Rangers winning the Stanley Cup, only because the Rangers were a great regular season team, and then it almost didn't happen. But there's nobody that thought the U.S. was really going to win. They knew they would place in it because they had great players, but nobody was thinking they were going to win it.
No. I mean, remember you have like Wayne Gretzky and you have Eric Lindros on that team. Like you have everything from everything. That Canadian team is a crazy combination of talent, of everything in the middle, like Sakic and all the players and Yzerman, all the players in the middle are. It was just a crazy good Canadian team, it was insane. So definitely, what it meant for that. We had a fun time last year doing our Miracle on Ice thing. I'm sure 9 years from now, when the 50th anniversary will be a big deal for Miracle on Ice for sure. But it is a great memory. Go ahead, Mike.
Then I'll feel old.
Then you'll feel old. I know. If you don't feel old already, you're not doing it right, Mike. I feel old now. All right, so we are. I didn't say we were going to talk about buyers and sellers at the deadline today on this podcast. I'm going to be talking about it tomorrow on my blog. We'll be talking about it tomorrow on the podcast as well. But
I mentioned a few names though.
I did want to talk today about real briefly before we get out of here what I mentioned on my blog, because I'm kind of making this like a trade deadline preview week on Hockey Buzz, and I think that all the podcast will follow that after this. But today I wrote, because I had a really interesting discussion yesterday with somebody about, will this trade deadline be a dud? Are we looking at a dud trade deadline? Which is, it has every potential to be that. I mean, it's possible.
It's easier to say it'll be a dud than it'll be good. That's true.
I don't think it'll be a dud, but I think. Don't say trade deadline day. Say trade deadline week.
The trade deadline period or whatever. Yeah. The trade deadline period.
Because I especially if the Canadian government doesn't back off the ridiculous 14-day quarantine crap, and it should go down to at least 7 days with testing, like everybody else is doing, but they're still sticking to 14 days.
But it might by then.
I hope so, because I think right now the whole thing with Pierre-Luc Dubois and now Dzingel with Ottawa, which is less impactful because Ottawa's not going to make the playoffs. But the whole thing with Dubois sitting in a hotel room for 2 weeks and then getting hurt because he's been inactive for 2 weeks.
Bro, he had 3 points yesterday.
Yeah, he came. He came back after being on the IR and he played really well, but. I'm sorry, especially when you're talking about less than a month to go before the playoffs start, teams are not going to say, sit the guy out 2 weeks. These Canadian teams are already petitioning the Canadian government to get some sort of special dispensation because it's ridiculous.
I'm going to give you a reason why I think the deadline will be very good, and I think it's because teams are going to try and set themselves up for this expansion draft too. I think some of those trades will be expansion draft trades.
Because here's the thing, the schedule is so tight from the end of the season to the expansion draft to the NHL draft that they're going to have to do it now. Like there's really no other time to do it, and I think that you're going to see a lot of it. I also think it's going to be interesting because you're going to have more sellers than we normally have. We normally have a lot of buyers and not a lot of sellers. We're going to have a lot of sellers this year.
But I think part and parcel with being sellers, with the cap being so tight this year with a number of teams, if you're going to be a seller and you have a guy who's a rental and you want to get anything for that rental, that team that is selling the player is going to be motivated even more than ever to retain salary because they can get assets for those players. Like, okay, for example, Eric Stahl with the Sabres. I'm not guaranteeing that Eric Stahl is going to get traded, but he's making a little over, I think, 3.5. Sabres retain 50%. He's a $1.75 million player. You don't think you can get a good return on Eric Stahl if you retain 50%?
I mean, teams, the way, if you're willing to give up your draft picks, and that's the big thing now is, first round draft picks feel like they're untouchable. Like, I've talked to people about it because there's really gotten to the point where the last couple deadlines, we have seen so few of them move around that they really are getting, when we see them move around, we're surprised by them, like Brady Shea. Like, that was a surprising thing. Mm-hmm. But second round draft picks are now kind of where it's at for these picks with these rental players. I think you're going to see a lot of seconds. And with the amount of talent coming out, second round draft picks are like first round draft picks once were. Like, we have so much talent coming out now that second round draft picks are not bad at all.
With the exception of the big names. I mean, at home, you're going to get a first round pick back. I refuse to believe that a team that is that interested in a defenseman who's got another year left in his contract is not going to give up a first-round pick, especially in a year. And we heard it on the weekend. I think it was Chris Johnston from Sportsnet was talking about the or Elliot Friedman, the potential of moving the draft to 2022 and how there are a lot of hurdles against that. So you're going into a draft year where a lot of these teams, and it's going to be an equal playing field, Russ, but a lot of these teams are not going to have the level of confidence that they have normally in their scouting for players in the 2021 draft. That might make them more willing to trade a first round pick.
All right, so I can give an example, and I did write about this on Sportsology if people want to check out. I did mention the draft and the WHL starting up and all that. So you can look at like the way the New York Jets were able to acquire first round picks this year. Even Seattle traded them one to get Jamal Adams because I think Seattle felt like, hey, this draft is really a crapshoot because we haven't really seen players in the NBA. They were drafting players that played like 2 games.
Yeah.
Here. So if there is a little bit of that, and normally if you're getting towards the bottom of the second round, normally you're talking about around less than 40% chance of them being NHLers. Now you might be talking about a 25% chance simply because there's more of a risk this year.
Yeah, and don't be surprised, Dak, if some of these deals that we're talking, seconds and thirds, that they're 2022 or 2023 second.
A lot of that.
Because they would rather push off those draft picks until a year where they can actually scout, rather than this year when it's going to be a crapshoot.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, there's a lot of guys. Bobby Ryan's a good one. I'm going to be getting into my blogs this week. We're going to be about sellers tomorrow, buyers on Wednesday, and then Thursday and Friday I'll be starting into the top players they're possibly traded, moving into like the rumor chart next week. So that's that's kind of where we're at.
I'll just say this, and I said it before, and 2 years ago, coming into like a year out of this before the pandemic, I was like, there's no way these NHL GMs are going to make the same mistake before by giving up players so that players don't get taken. But now the way the cap is and everything else, they are absolutely going to do that again.
Yeah. They're going to sell. They're going to sell out to dump some of these bad contracts. Now, okay. Speaking of bad contracts, and I know we've mentioned them a few times last week, but the story continues to get advanced. In his comments yesterday to the media, and in skating and practice, the Sabres forward Jeff Skinner was not on any of the top 4 lines. And they indicated now Ralph Kruger has not spoken to the media yet. He's going to do that later this afternoon before their game. I think they're either on Long Island or in New Jersey tonight. I haven't checked, but right now it's suspected he's going to be a healthy scratch. And again, I renew this. I do not get what Kruger and the Sabres are doing. Now, this is the thing. A player has a responsibility to put in an effort and try his utmost. This is a guy who has scored 25 to 30 goals almost every year in his career. Is he a defensive liability? Sure. But if that was a problem, then you shouldn't have signed him to an 8-year contract at $9 million per. You knew what you were signing. So
this group didn't do that. Like this group that's in there right now.
The owner did.
The owner did, but the owner, he's not the guy who signed it. There's plenty of ways to pass the buck around here, so I understand that.
Oh, wait, but Ak, I'll ask you this: what is the motivation here? The only thing I can think of is you can get him to waive his no-move clause so you can expose him to Seattle and get Seattle to take him. Do you think Ron Francis is going to take Jeff? And now he knows Jeff Skinner from Carolina. If the Sabres give him a first-round pick and says, okay, you got 6 years at $9 million, is he going to take Ron, or is he going to take Jeff Skinner off of the Sabres hands?
I think he might.
I don't know. I don't think so.
I don't even think Skinner will waive his no trade to begin with, but I would ask.
I feel like we're in a show. It feels like a showdown, Like it feels like it's gotten to the point where it's like beyond. It's way beyond stuff we know. Like there's definitely stuff that we don't know going on here because whenever we get to this, whenever it's this not understandable, like when it's completely bizarre, like that he's at least on the ice looks like he's giving it all. He's getting chances to score. People are talking about that in the chat room. And it's true. I watched another game the other day. Saw him live getting chances to score, not getting the ice time. He must be like until you apologize to me, you're going to be on the fourth line. It feels like something. It feels like a ridiculous showdown that's on.
It does. I would ask this: if I were Mike Harrington, because he's around the team every minute and I'm not, I would ask the question: if Skinner gets, basically, if he does get scratched, do you feel, Ralph Kruger, that you are a better team without Jeff Skinner? And I'd like to hear his answer because if he thinks it's yes. Then if I'm the owner, I have to talk to that coach now because even though what everybody's going to say is, hey, Skinner should just play defense, it's not in his game. So are you benefiting?
It goes beyond defense. It goes beyond that.
And are you benefiting by not playing him or playing him on the fourth line? The answer is no.
But
this feels very much like something Kruger has gotten through to all the players on the team. Like Kruger feels like he's gotten some kind of system into everybody's head and they're all agreeing and they're all buying in and Skinner is openly not buying in. That's what it feels like, something along those lines. Like, so Skinner's we're better. We need everybody buying into the same system.
This is the thing that Russ and I mentioned. I mentioned this to Russ before the show. A few years ago, there was a situation ongoing with the Rangers and Wade Redden, and Wade Redden gets buried down in the American Hockey League. But the rules were different. You could bury the full $6 million salary down there. And, because of the rules of the CBA at that point, he was stuck in the American Hockey League because they couldn't afford to put him on the NHL roster, and he wasn't good enough to play in the NHL at that point. That's not the case anymore. Now, if you sent Jeff Skinner down to Rochester, you could only bury a little over $1 million. He's stuck. He's stuck. The Sabres can't trade him. They can't find anybody to take that salary on. They can't. He's got the no move clause. So if he's just interested in collecting his money, he stays in Buffalo and that's it. The Sabres, unless the Sabres take an equally bad contract back, they can't move him.
Right? The thing is, they know this. Kruger knows this. Everybody knows this. So when you ask yourself, okay, they're not idiots. Like these are obvious things, right? So when you sit there and you say, okay, if these are that obvious, there is something else. There's something, and if he's sitting there saying, okay, we're going to have Skinner for the next 12 years or whatever going to happen for, Kruger's playing a long game here. Like he's doing something. He's trying somehow to get into Skinner's head to be like, this is what the commitment I want.
A long game, Eck. So last year Skinner scores 40 goals with Jack Eichel. How many goals? Huh? 2 years. 2 years ago. How many goals does Taylor Hall have with Jack Eichel? One freaking goal.
Yeah.
One.
Yeah. One freaking goal. Let's ask Kruger. You have moved heaven and earth to get Taylor Hall on this team.
Yeah.
You gave him Jeff Skinner's spot in the lineup. Taylor Hall will be gone next year. Skinner will last way beyond that. Have you helped your organization? And the answer is no.
Well, no, but he's going to say I don't. Kruger is not. Like I keep going back to the same thing in my head. Like I deal with this all the time, right? When I'm dealing with GMs all the time, I'm dealing with this kind of stuff all the time, and there's stuff that's not logical that we can't even discuss on here sometimes. But
yeah,
but I always find out in the end what it was, and at the end you're like, oh, okay, I get it.
Eichel has 2 goals.
Right.
Taylor has 1 goal. Yeah.
I feel like at the end of the day, we're gonna get it somehow, or if this is just 2 incredibly stubborn people like Skinner and Kruger, like Skinner's like, you can't trade me, you can't move me, I'm just going to do my own thing. And Kruger's like, you're not going to play if you do your own thing.
Good. Keep paying $9 million.
Okay.
So if you're Kruger, it doesn't matter how much your guy's playing. He's a player on your team. And if he's not buying in, you can't go to a guy and just give into him because he's making $9 million.
Yeah, I want to answer Jake in the chat room. He was on the second line Saturday. Great, Jake. No, do I watch every single Sabres game? No, I was watching the outdoor game. So get over it.
Yeah, I mean, no, he is. I mean, today, like we said, today's not even on any of the four lines. So I mean, things change all the time. Yes, he played a shift on the second line in the game we saw too in Philly, but
we don't know for sure. And we don't know for sure whether he's going to get benched because, they could be simply, this was the shot across the bow and Kruger then puts him back in the lineup. I don't know the thing is, I don't know what lesson is learned here. It's like, I really don't. It's like, okay, you can take away his playing time, but you're killing yourself and you're killing your team the thing is, the Sabres, they've fired general managers. They have fired coaches. They have changed rosters. What has been the constant? They can't win.
But this isn't this GM's coach, right? Kruger was hired before,
right.
And that to me, at the end of the day, puts Kruger in a really tough spot. Like that's where Kruger, because right now, there's no accountability really going on for the GM because he can sit there and say, "This isn't my coach, and he's doing this stuff, and I can't do." We have to pay him.
The thing you have to worry about now, Ak, is that apparently, Eichel likes Kruger, and of course, what has started to pop up now is with the Sabres playing as badly as they are, how long is Eichel going to stick around before he's going to start asking to want to get traded? I mean, that's
fair. Mike, let me ask you this question, and Ek too. So I'm sure they didn't envision it this way, but most of their top players, Eichel's a -8, Olsen's a -8, Reinhardt's a -11. This team. Is that all on the players, or?
Yeah, I mean, some of that's got to be on the coaching, obviously.
It has to be.
And I think that at the end of the day, I think Kruger's position is in jeopardy. He's going to play this. He's going to hold out. Like we've all seen this.
Last season, no matter what, he will.
Not so sure. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the issue is that, like I say, he's not this GM's coach, and at some point, the Skinner thing is gonna blow up in his face if he's not careful. Like he's obviously gone to the GM. There's no question that Kruger's a guy would go to the GM and go to the owner, and the owner and the GM know why it is that Skinner is not playing. They know. Exactly. That's something we don't know anything about, but they do.
I think more than just the Skinner thing that is going to be against Kruger is the fact that if you looked at the acquisitions that Adams made, they were all catered toward Kruger, bringing in Tobias Reeder, bringing in players that played for Kruger in Edmonton or played for Kruger for Team Europe. Taylor Hall is the perfect example. I mean, I'm sure Pagula is not happy that they threw out $8 million prorated on Taylor Hall, and he's got 10 points, but he's got 1 goal.
Was the Ayres pickup really a good pickup at this point?
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it was an okay pickup in the sense that Marcus Johansson was never going to do anything here.
Well, it's not like he's doing anything either.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying. I think they brought him in to be sort of the veteran guy to not have to put Middlestat or Cousins at second line center. But is he lighting it up? No.
You got to change the culture through Jack Eichel, not through Eric Stahl. That's the issue. To me, this is Jack Eichel's team. Jack Eichel is not. He's not even Connor McDavid. He's a big personality. Like he's a much bigger personality than we're really being led to believe. Like Mike, you've been around that team. He's a big personality. Like he is not Matthews. He's not McDavid. He'll speak. He'll say what he's thinking. He gives his teammates a lot of help for what they do. He's like so he is going to be an issue for them. And it's not going to be able to hide that. So we're definitely at one of these chicken. The game of chicken essentially.
Because the level of frustration is slow.
You know what's interesting about this team, Ek? You know who the least problem is this year? It was the most talked about guy last year, Rasmus Ristolainen. He's been the least problem.
Well, and he's a problem, and not of his own making, but he's a big
now he's battling, the lingering effects of COVID, which might be like a cautionary.
But he's played well, is my point.
Yeah, he has played well. Yes.
Played well, but it's cautionary tale that the symptoms stay around for a while. Yeah, he's you know, I mean,
Actually, Funky has hit on it. He's right about were the Sabres pissed off when Babcock chose the Leafs? Yes. Would the Sabres have been better off with Babcock? The answer is probably yes.
yeah, the answer is definitely yes. But Babcock, who's now going to take over the Saskatchewan team, right? Crazy world we live in.
For free.
For free. Another.
Well, he can build his own rink with the money he has. He doesn't need to make any money.
Sure.
He doesn't need. Yeah, right. Exactly. All right, that's all the time we have for today. We've run over anyway. Thank you guys for watching. We will be back again tomorrow. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey.